in the chat box in the Zoom application. See, a lot of people have already picked up on that idea, and thank you all. And again, we have the interpretation box, this globe figure at the bottom of your screen. Please click on that and choose your preferred language. We have the choice between English and French. Okay, well, I think we'll get started. We have not too many more people are joining right now. Again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this presentation on data sharing for HDP Coherence, practical case studies. This is a report that IDEAL has been working on for a while, and we're really anxious to present our findings. Again, one last time, before we start, we would like to invite you all to select your preferred language. This event is available in English or French. You can choose a language by clicking on the interpretation globe at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please, once more, go ahead and select either English or French. My name is Frank Riley, and I am the Senior M&E Advisor for the IDEAL activity. And I'll be introducing this session and the moderators and speakers. IDEAL stands for Implementer-Led Design, Evidence, Analysis, and Learning. As you can see on the slide, IDEAL is a learning activity funded by USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. IDEAL aims to strengthen humanitarian development and resilience food security activities by focusing on foundational skills that enable effective programming, such as adaptive management, data for decision-making, and HDP coherence. We also manage and host the Food Security and Nutrition Network website and newsletter. This webinar series is called HDP Coherence in Practice, Insights from the Implementing Community. I thought we would start by just talking a little bit about what we think HDP coherence means. In early 2022, USAID released the document Programming Considerations for Humanitarian Development Peace Coherence, a note for implementing partners. In that document, HDP coherence is defined as approaches that promote complementarity and collaboration across humanitarian, development, and peace actors in pursuit of a common agenda to maximize impact and sustainability and reduce the need for humanitarian assistance over time. So HDP coherence is about getting out of our silos and working together to meet longer-term food security and resilience needs, to address food security needs caused by shocks and reduce vulnerability. While the concept of HDP coherence isn't new, today's unprecedented and compounded shocks and stresses in an increasingly more complex and interdependent world make it even more urgent for us to move past these humanitarian development and peace silos towards more holistic and connected approaches. During today's webinar, we will be focusing on how implementers have collaborated across the HDP pillars to facilitate greater data and information sharing, both within and outside of their organizations, to improve effectiveness, again, across humanitarian development and peace-focused interventions. I think Bella has put in the chat box a link to the new report, which is published today, so it's very timely. The report examines activities in Madagascar, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Ethiopia, and their data sharing efforts to improve HDP coherence. Each case study provides a brief overview of how different organizations share data and information, both within their own organizations and with outside partners, to improve program efficiency, that reflect the needs of populations in different operating contexts. Contexts such as protracted conflict in the DRC, ongoing climate crises like drought and cyclones in Madagascar, and continuous cycles of climate and conflict crises in Ethiopia. At this point, I'd like to introduce our moderators for the session and the authors of the report, Jenny Morgan and Jen Ferrari. I'll pass it over to you all.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks so much for that introduction. Before I introduce the panel, I'd like to just take a minute with the audience and we have a couple quick poll questions here. This is going to pop up on your screen in just a second, but there we go. So this first question here is about what potential benefits you see in sharing data and information to improve HDP coherence. Feel free to select multiple options here, but maybe think about the ones that would be most beneficial for you. And then we have a second question here. What types of data would you be most interested in accessing, or might you be most interested in accessing from other programs that would help you with your own activities? Just take a minute here. Or perhaps I need to read these out just so they're translated. In terms of benefits, we're looking at reducing duplication of effort, improving the efficiency and effectiveness of activities, supporting population selection, and strengthening ability to adaptively manage. And anything else you have, you can pop that into the chat. In terms of the data, these were some ideas: market assessments, conflict assessments, gender analyses, and you have to scroll down to keep seeing the other ones: food prices, displacement monitoring, humanitarian access, shocks and stresses, or again, other. You feel free to put that into the chat. Great. So let's take a look. Again, all of these really are benefits, but we see here some of the top ones: reducing duplication of effort and strengthening our ability to adaptively manage, as well as improving the efficiency, the effectiveness of activities. So that's great. There might be a few others in the chat that folks added. And then in terms of, the types of information, again, I think there is no wrong answer here, but this was just to get us thinking, what would be most valuable in our own context. Looks like market assessments are there, conflict assessments, shock and stress monitoring, and then many others were close behind: gender analyses and food prices. So we're going to hear about some of these examples from our panelists in just a minute, but thanks for participating and just thinking about what is important in your own context, because that's what we hope to convey today, some things that you can take home with you. Okay, I think we can move to the next slide here. Great. If all the panelists could just turn on your video, I wanted to introduce our panel. These are from the three case studies that we featured. From CRS Madagascar, we have Kara Raboan Relina. I said it better in practice. Gerard Rabisoa. And then from Mercy Corps DRC, we have Carolina Skiblana and Otavia Manienes. And then from Ethiopia, we have Ashanafi Alemu from, and I'm sorry, I'm not reading out their titles, who is the program manager for GEOP for CRS, and Retta Judisa from the SPEAR RIFSA, which is led by World Vision. And Karen Gerard are both from the RIFSA Maharo. in Madagascar that CRS leads. So thank you all, panel, for joining. I think we could take that down and just show the panelists here. So I'm going to kick off. We have a bit of a conversation here we'd like to have. But first, I'd like to pass it over to our panelists just to share a little bit of background information so that you've got some more context on each of their various programs and activities. So to start us off, I'm going to pass it to Kara here to talk about Madagascar.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all very much for joining us. And I'm very happy to represent CRS Madagascar and our Mahara Rifsa. As was mentioned in the introduction by Frank, Southern Madagascar is known for a very chronic context that faces climate change and prolonged droughts that have been happening cyclically for many years now. Our programs and our HDP approach really works to create coordinated complementarity in our programming. The 3 awards that we're talking about, yes, the Mahara Rifsa is there to promote humanitarian response and improve resilience. At the same time, while our emergency programs, RIMA and Tabiri, are there to provide humanitarian response to save lives and reduce acute food insecurity, as well as Tabiri, which is there as our emergency seed program to create increased access to necessary inputs. So for our design for HDP, it was really about CRS's global approach to the HDP coherence. We want to create complementarity, coordination, and reduce duplicated efforts with all of the international partners. There are many operating in Southern Madagascar. So for us, the focus was to develop a food security monitoring approach using our MIRA data dashboard and really look at how we can develop an approach to anticipatory action. MIRA helped us, this is the data dashboard that Gerard will talk about, to look at acute food insecurity, food availability, consumption, and we also combined that with IPC data that was updated quarterly based on the emergency context and the humanitarian response. Alongside that, we used the National Office of Nutrition. They developed smart nutrition surveys every quarter, and we use those data coupled with the Mahara Rifsa and the other program data to monitor the MAM, the moderate acute malnutrition and severe acute malnutrition rates in those zones, as well as really looking at our monitoring data on nutrition outcomes, on livelihoods, increased incomes, increased savings, and how improved governance and in relation to that, the food distributions that were happening through the emergency programming, how that was creating improvements in food security and nutrition security overall. And at the same time, we wanted to look at this coordinated effort of the general food distribution that it was brought about in humanitarian response, as well as the lean season food distribution that Mahara provides for those households in the first 1,000 days. So it was very critical for us, given this context, to have a coordinated effort and a very much complementarity and leverage points between those 3 programs to improve our overall programming and also really address the needs of the most vulnerable. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Gerard.
Hello, everyone. So thank you so much, Kara. As Kara said that MIRA, or monthly interval resilience analysis, plays a critical role in HDP Coherence data sharing. Household hunger scale is one of the information that we shared periodically. Details about little, moderate, and severe household hunger scale. And it shows different aspects of household hunger scale, different location, different household type, and different categories of population in one period. So this kind of platform, which developed by CRS in collaboration with Cornell University, help this kind of very important information that we use during the data sharing and analysis during HDP session. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gerard. And now we will pass it over to Carolina, who leads the crisis analysis team in the DRC at Mercy Corps.
Hello, thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you everyone for coming. So as Jenny said, I lead the crisis analysis team in DRC, which is a team that actually is part of a wider, larger family of crisis analysis teams in various Mercy Corps programs, and we are one of the oldest ones. Our mission, or sort of our objective as a team, is to support data-driven decision-making, to help the teams with adaptive management, and as our colleagues also said in Madagascar, to support anticipatory action in a very highly volatile context of various interdependent crises in DRC. Some of you are probably well aware of the context, but we do operate in the Eastern DRC, and Mercy Corps is in a very specific position where we do have at the same time emergency programs, development programs, and peace building programs that somehow intersect and work in a similar environment. And what they all have in common is that they operate in those different crises and they need to deal with this crisis environment and context. And that's where my team comes in handy as within the crisis analysis. Jenny, can you go maybe to the next slide? Yeah, we have a various portfolio of what we are doing, which is both like regular support to the programs and some ad hoc things. And today we are going to talk about a specific product, which is called the SHAPES score, or the Operation Context Analysis score, which is something that we developed in order to be able on a long term to monitor evolutions and development of context across 7 different dimensions that were built based on the hypothesis of our programs, and that allow us to both look for long-term trends and also identify shocks that can sort of like either hinder or support implementation all those programs. So emergency, development, and peace building. And you can see there are the 7 dimensions, and the score is built in those dimensions, but is used using quantitative indicators, and it's about 50 indicators in total. They are mainly using secondary sources. I will leave it for that. I think, Jenny.
Thanks, Carolina. Okay, and then on to the last presenters here. We have, I believe Ashanafi will be presenting this first slide. You're still muted, Ashanafi.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to present to you about the collaborative data and information sharing effort between the Joint Emergency Operation, which we call JOB Consortium, and other resilience food security activity consortiums in Ethiopia. Let me give you a brief about JOB. JOB, as indicated, it stands for a Joint Emergency Operation. It is a vital humanitarian emergency food assistance initiative in Ethiopia. As a project targets disaster affected and transitory food insecure people across several regions in Ethiopia. The project operates as a consortium comprising 9 organizations, and which CRS takes the lead. Other consortium members include international organizations such as CARE, FH, GOAL, and World Vision, and local organizations like Organization for Rehabilitation and Development of Amara, which we call in short ORDA, the Relief Society of Tigray, Maki, and Harar Catholic Secretariat. These are the consortium members. The JOB project has a vibrant early warning mechanism, which encompasses high frequency context monitoring, data collection, analysis, and interpretation, forecasting, and sharing information for different stakeholders. And interestingly, JOB collaborates also with other resilient development assistance projects in several waradas where they overlap or intersect their operations. So the major ones are SPEAR-2, which is World Vision Ethiopia-led development assistance consortium. This consortium has also members like ORDA and CARE. The other is PRESERVE. It is also a resilience food security activity. It's implemented by FH, Food for the Hungry. And also IFA is a third consortium. This is also led by CRS, and it involves partners like Harar Catholic Secretariat and the Center for Creative Leadership. So the map in the right side shows waradas or districts or regions where these projects operate. The light blue shaded areas shows geographic implementation areas, and areas encircled by yellow shows areas that job overlaps with the development food assistance activities such as SPEAR, IFA, and also PRESERVE project. So these are the places, especially the yellow encircled areas are places job overlaps that is geographic areas with these development projects. Next slide. So the map here shows the job data collection and sharing activities. So as you can see here, job collects data from the community level, both primary and secondary data. Then job processes this data through analysis, compilation, interpretation, cleaning. So performs these analysis stages, and then presents the data on the dashboard, and also prepares a narrative report, which should be shared for several stakeholders in Ethiopia. So at different point, job shares its data with resilient development programs. In the first place, the raw data shared for REPSAs, which are IFA, SPEAR, and PRESERVE, so that they do also their own analysis in the way they want to present the data. And also job makes its dashboard available for these development activities through its dashboard, which is public and shared also on a website. And also the third way is that job also shares the narrative report with this project. Job does not only shares data, but also receives different type of data from these projectors. For example, job receives MIRA data from IFA project for the Eastern operation areas, and also job receives different other kind of evaluation, baseline report, and other studies from other development activities. This is the way that we share data with each other. Thank you.
And, with that, with having a little bit of context, we wanted to now go into a discussion with the panelists here. And then following this moderated piece, we will have time for audience questions. So, while people are speaking, feel free to pose your questions. There's a Q&A box here at the bottom. You may not see it. It may be in the more option of menus there. And then you can just type in your question and we will, take note of that, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can following the panel. Okay, so to start us off, our first question here is, we know that there are lots of challenges involved in, sharing and data and information amongst humanitarian development and peace actors. But we want to hear a little bit about, what is the most important factor that enabled sharing within your organization or, with other organizations outside of yours. And I want to start with Kara from Madagascar. If you could talk to us a little bit about, the biggest enabling factor there.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, everybody. I think for us in Southern Madagascar and the Maharu program, it was definitely the change in context and the acuteness of the emergency situation, and also the COVID crisis. That really vamped up the urgent need to create this coordinated and complementary effort for humanitarian response in the beginning. Also, for those of you who don't know, our Maharu RIFSA was co-designed with the idea that there would be, like in Ethiopia, an overlaid or a layering of the humanitarian project. That's the RIMA. And with the idea, as in the Maharu treatment zones, that's where we would be providing services and our programming to improve food security and resilience, whereas in the control zone for the RIFSA is where our RIMA project would be providing humanitarian response. And really, Maharu operated as an emergency project for the first 3 years. We were in all of our zones, we're in IPC4. So given that context in the beginning, as well as COVID, that really changed the urgency to have this coordinated effort. And we also collaborated with the other international organizations that are operating in the southern zone, in the Great South, as part of the food security southern cluster in Madagascar. So it was really to share data and share information, not only as we demonstrated the MIRA data, but also our own Maharu RIFSA data to help inform the understanding of the situation and coordinate that resilience monitoring as well as the humanitarian response. It was also what was needed is an opportunity to help our own staff interpret and understand the data. So we did a lot of field-based data interpretation, collective interpretation, deep dives into understanding what these data tell us, and also using the MIRA data to kind of ground truth our own RIFSA and emergency program monitoring data. So it was really critical to have that triangulation and that strategic view of all of those sources of data. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, so the context was really important there in your case. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And now I want to just turn to Carolina, the same question, what were the biggest enabling factors for you all?
Yeah, thank you. So in our case, I would say the biggest enabling factor was the leadership support. Before, so I said the team was created, I think in 2018, 2019, and we were originally called the humanitarian analysis team. And that really implied the fact that we were there to support the humanitarian or the emergency department in whatever they needed in terms of analysis for their work. Within the Mercy Corps leadership, both within the country and globally, this shifted to say, actually the team is dealing with the crisis and is analyzing the crisis, and all three types of programs we are implementing in DRC, they are being implemented in several zones. And so we are no longer just providing support to the humanitarian teams, we are also providing support to the development programs and to the peace building programs that are all impacted, sometimes in a different way, but they're all impacted by the different crises and their development. So in our case, having the leadership sort of strongly pushing for like sharing data, understanding data, providing the different programs with similar information so they can then adapt and they can also collaborate, because that's also really important. If a context in a zone that has been a sort of a zone of stability in an insecure area all of a sudden changes, and either it can be an influx of IDPs to a zone that is like in a longer term, it's stable. So then people come there looking for stability, and it can actually impact the development programs that are being implemented there. And they were designed for, let's say, 50,000 people, and all of a sudden there's 100,000 people. That shifts quite a lot. It can also be changed in the security context, where like zones that were insecure all of a sudden are become a little bit more secure. People are returning and they have different needs. So I definitely do want to stress how important it is to have a leadership buy-in in these kind of things. And if I can speak beyond just Mercy Corps, it's also like the, let's say, coordination leadership. So we are trying to also build alliances with like other partners that are providing analysis, and then engage with leaders of the response all the way to like different people within OCHA and the resident coordinator office to say like, this is important and we need your buy-in as the leaders of the response, both humanitarian and development and peace building, to allow people to work together and to share information and share data, and to provide each other with the missing information gaps, or like fill each other's information gaps.
Great. Yeah, no, that's really important to hear about, the buy-in and leadership and multiple levels, both within country leadership, but also with partners in the region, is super important. Yeah, with that, I'd like to ask Retta from Ethiopia to answer the same question here. In your context, what was the key enabling factor? Oh, you're on mute, Retta.
Sorry. So thank you so much. The key enabling factor, as Caronila already mentioned, for us is strong leadership buy-in is one of the major enabling factor. There is a long-standing existing relationship and coordination and collaboration between the two programs and the leadership of the two programs between GEOP and SPEAR 2. So that has led us to collaborate, strongly work together in sharing data among the two programs. So there is strong culture, pre-existing culture of collaboration between the two programs at the leadership level and at the middle manager level, at program leaders and male lead. So this kind of buy and engagement from the leadership at all levels led us to have a strong relationship and data sharing mechanism among each other. And the two programs, on top of that, the two programs share similar partner as earlier presented by Ashannafi. For instance, for SPEAR 2, ORDA is one of our major implementing partner, and CARE is also one of our major implementing partner. So the three consortium member, World Vision, ORDA, and CARE are implementing partner for GEOP 2. And we have geographic overlaps, not only having similar partner, but also geographic overlap that enable information sharing, and not only information sharing, but also use of that information. Over to you.
Thanks, Retta. And yeah, there's a table in the paper that shows that overlap of the GEOP operational areas with the three RIFSAs that are mentioned. So that gives you a sense of, while the RIFSAs are operating in different areas, the way that they overlap with GEOP is important. So you can take a look at that in the paper. Now we'd like to talk a little bit about, I think many people would be curious as to how you got started with this collaboration, with this data sharing, information sharing. So if you could, walk us through a little bit, what were those first steps that you took? And I'd like to start with Ethiopia this time. We'll go to Ashannafi just to tell us a little bit about what got you started. And if you could speak just a little closer to the microphone, it was a bit faint last time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. First, starting inside the organization is the best thing. If you are taking the case of CRS, in CRS we have different projects, both development and humanitarian projects. So we have got opportunities to share our project goals, to discuss on the aim, the outcome of our project, then also to understand the data needs of different projects. Especially we collaborated with IFA, Development Assistance Project, and CRS the first time to discuss on their data needs, their project outcome, and alignment of these project outcomes. Then we shared the data collection tools to address the needs of this both development and also our emergency program. So after that, this practice have expanded, out of our organization. Especially, we had very strong created a stronger relationship with Aspire project. As Areta indicated earlier, there was a leadership buy-in, a leadership discussion to start sharing data among these different projects from different organizations. So that was also another key step. And also then we need to also invest on some technologies and infrastructures to share data, like the Power BI technologies, websites, so that to make data and information easily available for other organizations and projects. So these are the key. But in addition to that, always we need to also foster our collaboration so that to maintain this data sharing practices, to sustain it. That means we need to be very responsive for the need of other projects out of our organizations, so that we have to prioritize also their request and respond within the required time. So responsiveness is one of the other factors which increased our collaboration to sustain this data sharing practices, and also frequent communication, meetings, informal communications, and also feedback that we are also receiving from these partners was also very helpful and important to improve on ourselves and sustain our practice. So in the meantime, we also had challenges like when we are doing this, when we are starting this data sharing practice, like different organizations have different data protection policies. So we need to also align the data we are sharing with the regulation. So there are some provisions and regulations that we need to see when we are sharing data externally to other projects. So it did not become a huge challenge as long as we managed to align with that. And also timeliness was also a challenge at the earlier stage. That means we didn't understand the needs of other projectors, their timeline. So gradually through informal communication, we also managed to resolve these challenges. Thank you, Over.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I mean, there was added complexity in your situation, not just working within, CRS or within World Vision, but you have to work across multiple organizations. And so there's that added challenge of the data sharing policies and other regulations. So that's important to hear, something to think about. Okay. And then I'd like to, let's see, go back to Carolina here on this question as well, just to hear about, your first steps.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'm gonna speak a little bit more about the tool that it was actually in the report, because I think what is interesting on it is that despite us starting more as a humanitarian analysis tool, this tool actually started from a collaboration between us and a development program. And for us, it was really important as crisis analysis because it allowed us to really step out of this role of being supported to the emergency and look broader and be supportive of the other types of programming. And we started the SHAPE score when we were approached by the male director of the development bush program funded by USAID, who came and was like, I need to find a way how we can monitor the context that we operate in, because this program is being implemented in 3 or 4 different areas and they are not the same. Some of them are very stable, some of them are already quite unstable. And we need to find a way how we can on a long term see what is happening there and how we can adapt and if we need to adapt. And then Otavio is going to talk about it a little bit later because it ended up being the case where they needed a tool to adapt. And so we started designing the SHAPE score around the hypothesis, contextual hypotheses that were coming out of the theory of change of this WUSH program. And we were focusing on the external hypothesis. So we were focusing on everything they talk about security situation, about humanitarian access, even though they did not call it humanitarian access, but it was a humanitarian access issue. We also looked at about some economic indicators and political stability, because that was something that was really important for some of the components of this WUSH program that was development program. So it was focusing on things like establishing market systems for water, so going really beyond this like traditional emergency water delivery. And we started both a set of quantitative and qualitative indicators and both primary and secondary data collection. And that was really interesting and super informative, but it was also super heavy. So one of the things we did once we did the first round on the first few sites was that first, the leadership took a lot of interest in the tool itself, and they were like, oh, that would be great if we can do it for all the other programs, including the emergency programs, and cover more territories. And our initial reaction was, well, this is going to be too heavy. We need to find a different way. So then we sort of went for the SHAPES 2.0, and we moved very strongly towards using secondary data and quantitative data only. And so now slowly, we moved this tool that was initially a mix of both into fully secondary quantitative data sourced. We use data from other organizations, from different clusters, both from like emergency coordination structures. So we go for OCHA, but we also look for other partners that are using different approaches. We are using some government available data. And so that's the second, let's say, initial step for this tool.
Thanks, Carolina. Yeah, I think it's the importance of kind of iterating and improving upon what you're doing is really important to hear too. It's not that, right out of the gate, you've got this great solution, but, in experimenting with the development program and kind of seeing what they both what they need to monitor, as well as, how best to do that, what's most efficient and practical. So I want to turn to Ottavia here and to hear a little bit about from the kind of I understand from the program perspective, how this has evolved and how you all have used this, the SHAPES monitoring.
Yes, so the Congo HAT, Carolina's department, supported the SWASA program, this WUSH and governance USAID funded program with its SHAPES tool when we really needed to have a score that would enable longer-term monitoring of the contextual hypotheses on security and access, mainly that were necessary for the program implementation through having objective indicators such as number and types of security access and incidents, for instance. So SWASA in that period was implemented in an area that was increasingly threatened in terms of security. And while USAID and Mercy Corps were being a little bit cautious on implementing those activities there, we had pressure from the communities that we were serving on continuing the activities. So the SWASA program team and the Congo HAT team worked together to have a tool that could provide legitimacy to our discussion and saying that this is the decision that we are taking because of X, Y, Z. So we used SHAPES in the implementation zone, assessing mainly security, access, economic, policy, and the environment. At the time, the Congo HAT department was developing a SHAPES for the whole territory, which included part of SWASA implementation areas. So in the SHAPES report that they delivered, they focus on SWASA areas in a few paragraphs, but also they leveraged the data that they found that they had through SHAPES together with the secondary data that they already possessed to prepare a sort of infographic report to present to USAID with the clear arguments on whether or not to resume activities in the SWASA implementation area. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think this really calls out the importance of having evidence to make your decisions with. So it's not just this feeling that things are changing, but actually monitoring the situation and being able to say, this is, why we will or will not intervene at this point. And I think that's really important. And just to point out, the Congo hat, I think, was the previous name. So it's that we're still talking about the crisis analysis team. Okay, great. And I just want to turn to back to Ethiopia and Retta this time to talk to us a little bit about, how have the data sharing efforts evolved in Ethiopia, and how you've done this.
Thank you, Jenny. So it has been involved from I think we strongly started collaborating with the Shanafi after getting the leadership buy-in in the past 2 years. Since last 2 years, we were strongly sharing this information, especially focusing on market monitoring data, because the BHA reporting template requires there is a section which talks about market assessment. So either we have to go to the field, collect the data, send different staff to different geographies and collect that data, and then do the data analysis and provide information regarding the market data. So GEOP saved us from doing that, from duplicating that effort. So we got the market monitoring data from GEOP, and then we use that data for reporting. So we started from that processes, sharing the data, and now we regularly meet, we frequently call each other, share information, not only beyond the market assessment, beyond the market data, we even started to discuss on some new areas, new needs that has been coming from BHA, like last year, I think the previous year, the USAID mission asked us to report on one of the baseline in the land indicator annually. Initially, we thought that indicator is going to be reported by external evaluators through the impact evaluation. That indicator is food consumption score, but the USAID mission asked us, no, we don't wait for several years to learn about food security status. You have to capture it either semi-annually or annually. So we agreed to report that indicator annually. And we were discussing with GEOP how they captured, how they construct that indicator, and how they do the scoring for food consumption score. And we learned a lot from them. And even in the target setting process for annual monitoring, I have got information from GEOP and also from our own evaluation finding. So we combined that in order to put our baseline values for food consumption score, and it's disaggregate. So that's one area. And the other area, recently, we collaborate beyond the market assessment that we have started is on PDM, post-distribution monitoring. So USAID asked us to do quantitative survey. Earlier, both of us, Joe, especially REFSA, CRS, REFSA, and SPIR2, we use qualitative PDM to do PDM reporting. But now USAID required us to introduce quantitative survey, and we were worried, okay, how we can do quantitative survey, which is costly within 6 months, two surveys within 6 months, one in Q3 and the other one in Q2 and the other one in Q3. Q2 means now. So we were discussing with the Shanafi and the job mail manager and also the IFA CRS mail lead, how we can do this survey. And finally, we agreed to do small sample survey using our own in-house capacity to conduct small sample survey, and yet rigorous, and yet good methodology, which is called load quality assurance method. So we are using these methods, sharing information how we can do this survey. And now we designed the data collection tool, both the survey questionnaire and also how we do the sampling, and then the qualitative one to triangulate the quantitative finding. So that's how it has been involved, starting from the market assessment and now up to sharing information on different technical M&E areas.
Yeah, and that's great. Like there's a foundation, so you can build from that and continue sharing. Okay, I want to just turn to Madagascar now and hear a little bit about, we know that there was, the Mahara Rifts is operating in the same areas as Rima and Tabiri, the humanitarian program activities. We want to hear a little bit about, what information was helpful to share from the RIFSA with those programs and why.
Thank you, Jenny. So in practice, we have a data system we call the food security monitoring. So we shared the different kind of information. We shared the MIRA data platform information quarterly and annually, update the cluster as well as during the IPC process to triangulate data and information. So we shared also key trend aspects, something like yield assessment, participant change in perception on food consumption, and during special period, for example. So we used jointly monitoring information related to water price, staple food, and livestock price also. So that to support program response and monitoring. So those are kind of information that we shared among the project internally at CRS and among different intervention in the zone. So what are the benefits? The benefits mainly about anticipatory action. So I can give example that we took during the key last year, that based on the conclusion that participants still have food stock until September, for example, because the analysis was in July, but the shock start in October. So program decided to reprioritize groups and locality, so for the next period of distribution and activity implementation. So RIMA, which is an emergency project, had to resume their food distribution. Instead of July, they resumed to October. That is an example. And the general food distribution, instead of September, they resumed in November. So that is the same for the staple food local purchases. So for MAHA, which is a program development program, we has stepped out training in food preservation and processing for locally food available, nutritious food available during that period. Those are kind of benefits that we got from this data sharing and analysis session at this HDP Nexus aspect. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great, Gerard. Thank you for sharing some of that background there on what was shared and how. So I have plenty more questions, but we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So I think I want to transition us now to be able to take some. Sorry, that keeps muting. My colleague Jennifer Ferreri, who's here, the co-author on the paper, is going to moderate this portion. And if you want to you can keep adding questions while we're discussing, but if you can pop those into the Q&A box. Thanks. Over to you, Jen.
Yes, hello, everyone. We definitely got a lot of questions from the audience. They seem to be clustered around a few different themes for our panelists. So I think maybe to get us started, there was one question from Tashome Galana Dinka about what the major challenges you came across and how you overcame them. I know some of you have mentioned some of those challenges, but I wanted to give a chance to others to mention some other challenges that you've faced and overcome during your data sharing efforts. Do we want to start? I know Ethiopia, you guys already mentioned that you had to overcome a lot of data sharing policy challenges and different timelines for different projects, since you had a lot of different organizations that you were coordinating with. Maybe I can throw it to the Madagascar team to ask you guys, although you were very coordinated from the get-go, what are some of the other challenges that you faced in trying to get programs to share more amongst each other beyond the dashboards?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Jen. I can go ahead. I think the Ethiopia team, our colleagues in JAOP and IFA talked about this, but within the RIFSAs and in CRS, we have a very strong CLA framework. And we have key learning pause and reflection points that have been embedded in our learning plan and our learning strategy, which really allow technical staff, along with the meal and learning staff, to really take time to sit down, to look at the data, all the data points. And as I said, we really seek this triangulation. So we have our monitoring data within the Mahara RIFSA, we have data from RIMA, and we have MIRA. Plus, then we would do that interpretation, and then we would share out our key learning points or adaptations to the cluster. And it basically was another point of data for them to really reevaluate the IPC assessments that came into country. So for us, it was critical that there were the processes in place, there were tools, and as the other teams mentioned, this leadership, and we call them learning leaders in CRS. It's necessary that everyone from, the country representative to the chief of party to the field agent really understand the importance of learning and data-based decision-making, and really think about that when deciding on specific adaptations, that we're not just using anecdotal evidence. We are using our field data, but we're taking time to really interpret it and understand it better. And as Gerard talked about, for example, one thing that we looked at in MIRA is really trying to understand the price of water. In southern Madagascar, it's a highly water scarce zone. So understanding in certain areas and certain times of year, the water price could go up to 3 times the amount in other places. So then that makes, wash behaviors very challenging. So using that as a really critical point to demonstrate the need and the importance of using data for decision making. Thanks. I don't know if Gerard has other things to add, but that's just from our perspective. Over.
It's okay, Kara. Thank you.
Are there any other, Kara, thank you for that. I think the audience is really interested in knowing more about the examples that you have of programs using data from one area and then using it in another. I was curious if maybe the CRS or World Vision GEOB partners could talk a little bit more about some data that you've utilized from one program and how it's maybe been used in your own program to make changes in the way in your activities or some of the different approaches that you're using. So a particular example that you have from how you use data and how you used it to adapt what you were doing. Ashanafi or Retta, could you, I don't know if one of you wants to answer this, but maybe unmute.
Yeah, Rata.
So we use that data for, as stated earlier, for learning and for adaptive management, and also for planning and programming, target setting. We use that information, data assessments to adapt to changes. For instance, we use early warning information system, early warning data that comes from GEOB for our DRR intervention, and market assessment data also for our commodity management and also for accountability to the donor. So we use that data for informing our programming and for planning and for decision making.
Okay, in addition to what Rata said, in addition to what Rata said, in the job side, we collect a lot of and diverse data, both in the early warning system and our vulnerability-based targeting program. So we use those data for making programmatic decision making, like deciding which order to go, which order to prioritize for our next emergency food response activities. And when I say order, it is equivalent of district. Then when we also identify districts to respond, the next decision is that still we use those data to decide which small administrative areas like Kabbales or village to prioritize within the district. So after that, also we use also data that we are collecting through these systems to identify the most vulnerable householders to provide the support. So every decision that we are making in the project is based on the data that we are collecting through the early warning system. In addition, the market monitoring information was also very helpful for us before. So we understand that our program or job imports a huge amount of food into the country. So we continuously monitor the market to make sure that this program would not have some negative impact on the market, vendors, and other stakeholders. And we use also the data to set transfer values. The market data, we use the market data to set cash transfer values for our project participants, so that the amount we provide allows them to purchase required amount of food and other items from the local markets. Thank you.
Great, and we definitely got a number of questions. So there was a question from Tatiana Klemenko from Global Communities and also from Tessa Kojo, and that are more interested in about how your programs are taking, like with these dashboards, there's always a challenge with making sure people are utilizing the dashboard data and the information provided. So Tatiana asks, how is the use of data achieved in a practical sense? So she's more interested in, are there examples of recommended standards, especially for those like Ethiopia, where you might have different types of collection methods or methodologies, sampling, specific data collection tools. And so first that question, and then I can ask a follow-up after that from Tessa. Anybody can answer. I just thought maybe this might be more appropriate for the Ethiopia GEOP team, since you guys are coordinating across multiple organizations that have different kinds of methodologies for sampling and data collection.
Yeah, so as you have indicated, job works with around nine consortium member organizations. One of these consortium members, which is called GOAL, is a new member to job, and they are focusing on nutrition. And the other 8 collaborate for food assistance program. So these organizations are working in different geographical areas, and they are also very different from one another. In the job consortium, we have a technical working group, which meets once at least in every quarter. So in these meetings, we agree on data collection needs, data collection strategies, data collection tools, and methods. So we align our data collection tools, methods, strategies in these meetings, and we implement these similar methods and strategies across partner organizations, so that to ensure also the quality of data coming from different organizations, different geographic areas is the same and up to the standard.
Great, thanks, Ashanafi. Yeah, I think one of these challenges is making sure that everybody is, there's trust in the data collection across different organizations, which is certainly a challenge, and then making sure everyone is agreeing on how data will be collected and which data will be collected. I know in the report, we talk a lot about the processes that you went through in order to get everybody on the same page and to understand which data would be helpful across many different kinds of projects that were operating in the same geographies. Maybe turning to another cluster of questions that we have, a lot of people are interested in measuring how you guys as programs are measuring whether or not data, the shared data that you do have is being utilized, and the value associated with that sharing of data. Does anybody have an example of measuring the adaptive management, or whether or not people are leveraging the dashboards or the conflict analyses that you have created? This is open to anyone.
I can use an example which is maybe like a little bit of a smaller, but one for us, what we realized within the crisis analysis team, that we need to take the extra step to share the data beyond just the dashboard and the reports, but to actually engage with the audience. And so we start doing like reflection sessions. So we would like share the report or the dashboard with the team, give them a little bit of time, and then have a session when we went through the report on the findings again, sort of having a discussion about like, does it make sense to you? Like, do you think there's something missing? And then we also try to accompany them with then like trying to way to implement what we found out. So specifically in my team, I have a stakeholder analysis and engagement specialist, who is a person who's not actually doing the analysis that like the Shapey score or what you have seen, but she helps the team to like engage with people who are important, because at the end of the day, most of the time what we are doing is helping people to like find evidence to engage with someone else. And if those people are communities, we also need to know who in the communities we can talk to. Who are the people who are going to listen to what we have to say, especially if we need to do adaptive management strategies that are, for example, downscaling. Like that's where we come to, like, if we come with new activities, yes, that happens as well, that we need engagement, but we really often need engagement for the development programs when there is a change that is going against what was originally planned. And so for us to have these live sessions, Q&As, and then like work through all those different scenarios and help the programs like to establish talking points or strategies or just like reflect further. That's how we also then know that our data is being used, because we were then where people are being actively using those data.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Great, thanks, Carolina. Does anybody else from the other two case studies want to jump in? I know continuous communication with different staff is certainly something that that came out of our report as a key lesson for different programs and different case studies, and having early engagement among staff. I want to throw to the Madagascar folks again, because I know you guys have some other unique parts of your project with overlap of staff that is certainly helping with sharing data beyond the dashboards. Maybe either Cara or Gerard, you could speak a little bit more about sort of the overlap that you have across your projects and the staff within them.
Yes, thank you for that question, Jennifer. So, as those are among CRS program, there is a overlap in terms of technical capacities and zone as well. And we have one culture of data utilization and data interpretation. We also use on database based on the participant list. From that, we can analyze, we can analyze the layering and integrating at household level, and also the co-location at the community level. That kind of information prove a culture of data utilization among staff in different areas. For example, at one community, how many people are participating at different activities, and how are the results of that participation at the special areas. So we brought that kind of culture of data utilization amongst staff and project participant at the three project implemented in the same zone. I don't know if you can add something, Cara, or thank you. Over.
No, I think that's good. Thank you. Thanks, Gerard.
I might actually ask, Cara, you added in the chat, but I know people are very interested in what you've said about trust building. So maybe if you can talk a little bit more about the trust required that you guys are utilizing for the Mira dashboard and community sharing.
Yeah, this is definitely an innovation and a success that was developed when Mira started in Malawi in 2018 and was brought to Madagascar with the idea, if you're doing community resilience monitoring, it's not an external, initiative. It's not something separate. It's really helping communities and bring them alongside as partners into looking at these data and understanding how communities are coping, how their situations are. So the enumerators are the agents working in the field are the same individuals. They come from the community, they speak the local language, they live there, they work there. So that trust is inherent from the beginning. And it might not have been clear, it is talked about in the paper, the Mira approach to sampling is using sentinel sites. So those same sites are continuously monitored on a monthly basis. So that relationship starts in the beginning with the community agents and it's built over time. So it's not different sites and different locations. So it really, I think, in our experience, that relationship and that trust continues. And that is the approach that CRS uses in our Mira monitoring in other countries, in Ethiopia, elsewhere. And that really has shown to create a difference in trust and not just seen as a data collection or a meal exercise. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think going back to the question of monitoring and evaluation or measuring uptake of data, it's definitely a challenge that we came out with in the report. It's still pretty early days in terms of identifying a shared framework for making sure that HDP coherence is happening within different contexts. But maybe you guys can talk a little bit more about how you're seeing or how that's evolving within your projects, or if there have been any updates since the case study on how you're measuring uptake of data, or maybe lessons learned about how to make data data from dashboards kind of come to life for program staff in order so that they might be able to utilize it in order to make adjustments in their programming as needed as context and needs change rapidly. Anyone? Too hard of a question?
No, I'm actually going to throw our Ethiopia colleagues under the bus, as we say, because I think they have great experience that they can share. And it really is true. I think their visual data dashboards have really helped the teams make it easier to interpret the data. I learned that from our own global learning across the RIFSAs. So I think that they have the answer, but I just wanted to encourage them to share. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. In our program, special and job program, we don't collect data just for the sake of collection, but every information or data that we are collecting, we believe to use that data for some programmatic decision, in addition to sharing the data on our dashboard for other stakeholders. So within our program, we use this data we are collecting. We interpret the data into different formats that shows the vulnerability level of different districts and regions in Ethiopia. So we translate the data into vulnerability in terms of geography, in terms of householders, so that to make a decision in terms of allocating the program resource to these areas where our data shows higher level of vulnerability, and also use the data to identify the most vulnerable householders, communities, to provide the job food assistance and cash and food assistance. So as much as possible, we link the data we are collecting with our programmatic activities, and also we use also the same data to evaluate ourselves, like whether our program is making some improvement in some areas or not, and also to decide to phase out from these areas. It is very short-term project, short-term initiative, very agile project, and in 3 months, 6 months, we may change location, districts, and all these changes should happen based on data. It is also a high-risk project. The budget involved in the project is very high. The resource involved is very high. It is in billions of dollars. So the decisions we are making are very careful based on data that we are collecting from primary sources, mostly from householders, from directly interviewing vendors, markets, and also doing some focus group discussions to understand the context. So that's how we link the data with the programmatic activities in our project. Thank you.
And you guys are now expanding, as I understand, new initiatives into the Tigray region with new partners. Is that right? Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that update in terms of the cash program that you're rolling out.
Yeah, so integrate, it is our engagement with Action Against Hunger. And they had a fund before like 3 or 4 months in December and November. Yeah, they had some fund to provide for vulnerable people in Tigray region, especially in town areas which are affected by a 3-year long conflict in the region. So by that time, we had the data of the most vulnerable householders, which we find through a month-taking data collection, analysis, and prioritization exercise. So the people were needy by the time. So we make this data available for Action Against Hunger because they had budget. Our project had some limited resource by that time to cover urban areas. We're focusing on rural areas. So we shared our data to Action Against Hunger. So they use this data to provide immediate assistance for the needy people. If they were doing a new data collection, a new analysis, a new prioritization, that would take for them more than a month, and that will increase suffering of people across these towns. But with our data exchange activity collaboration with this new organization, which is not member of the consortium, we managed to support people on time.
Great. I know that we only have 1 minute left to wrap up, but I just wanted to give the DRC team and the Madagascar team a quick chance to tell people about the updates that you have been doing since the case study was developed, and maybe some new partnerships or new ways that you're using the lessons learned of data sharing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, for us, it's a little bit specific because we are focusing on context and not on the programs, right? Like really the context the programs are operating in. So our biggest achievement so far is that, like, we are actually now partnering with other analytical partners that are focusing on the needs. So we, together with REACH and with OCHA, we established a working group that is focusing on like crisis analysis and quality of response. And we are trying to sort of see how we can use the context knowledge and sort of like the monitoring on the context, and then put it together with the information they are collecting on the actual needs on the ground, and then inform things like allocations of the emergency funds or the SURF fund or the humanitarian response plan. And going, because like very often we would have the context report and then the actual needs, and we are trying to say there is a reason why in certain areas the needs are like repeatedly higher than the other areas, and sometimes it's just because people don't have access to those areas, and so nobody can respond and nobody can bring anything tangible to those people, and those people are still going to be there and the needs are still going to be really high. So
Great.
For us, working on this was really important to coordinate with other analytical actors.
Okay, I may not have time to throw it back to Kara, but I know you've been answering things in the chat box about updates, but we definitely appreciate, and I want to throw back over to Frank to wrap up our session. Thank you so much to all the panelists and to all the questions from our audience.
Yeah, gosh. Thanks, Jen and Jenny. That was really a great session. And thanks to all the panelists as well for super interesting discussion. That was really wonderful. And I want to thank all the folks who showed up today for coming. I hope you got some useful information about this topic. We should have a link in the chat box. I don't see it. Oh, yeah, here it is. I want to appeal to everyone's professionalism as a monitoring and evaluation specialist, to the extent that those of you in the audience are M&E specialists. You know how important data is to track how well you're doing. We have a feedback survey that we would love for you all to fill out. That is now here in the chat, and we would be very grateful for you to spend, it shouldn't take more than 2 minutes to fill out, but it would be, again, very useful for our purposes. to understand how you like this and how we can potentially improve these kinds of presentations and online discussions in the future. So thank you for all of that. Also, again, make sure that you check out the full report. There's should be a link for that in the chat as well. It's just been published within the last 24 hours. We're really proud of it. Jenny and Jen have done a great deal of work, and I think it's a really worthwhile thing to consider and to pass around. I also want to remind you all to register for our next webinar in this series on HDP Coherence. It will be a really interesting session on our upcoming report on BHA's multi-year emergency programs. And lastly, we'll be sending an email out with links to all the resources from today's session, so look for that as well. And with that, if there's nothing else from anyone, I just want to say thank you all and goodbye.